Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details of this or any of our watches. Today, we're discussing a legend, the original version of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore. This is the 42mm steel reference 25721 as it debuted back in 1993. Designed by a young Emmanuel Guet, it was a modern-day sports-oriented elaboration of Gerald Gente's immortal 1972 original. And of course, the revolutionary always becomes the establishment. Gente hated what Guet had done to his design, but after a slow start, the watch really caught fire in the late 1990s, and it became one of the iconic oversized sports references, not just of the late 90s and the 2000s, but of all time, almost single-handedly creating the genre of the haute horlogerie oversized sports watch. So, in steel, 42 millimeters in diameter, probably thinner than you think at 14.2 millimeters thick, and then lug-to-lug, if we just measure the case, it is 53.6, but you're going to wear this on a bracelet or a strap that involves these two intermediate links, the plots that they're called. That's what they're called. They're called plots. So the total distance across the wrist is a beefier 58 millimeters, which is why I always advise people to consider a Royal Oak or an Offshore on a bracelet as wearing a size or two larger than its rated diameter. So this is a 42, but you really need to think of it as a 44. You can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, we're probably at the limit of what's possible. You can put it on a strap. It will wear a bit more compact, but this is full bracelet, and I'm assuming you're buying it because that's how you want to wear it. So I'm going to recommend 16 centimeter circumference wrists and up. The bracelet is a little bit uncommon on offshores. They're generally sold on straps, and you do lose some of the richness when you get the watch on a strap, although it might be the more native aesthetic. When you have the bracelet, you've preserved more of Gente's original vision for the watch. You've also preserved all of that hand finishing and labor that goes into finishing the bracelet of a Royal Oak. And it takes between 9 and 11 hours to fully finish these bracelets. So this is very tangibly part of the handcrafted value of the watch. You can see that there's taper down, integration of case and lugs and bracelet. So down from the mid case through the lug hoods, through the bracelet, it tapers down towards the clasp, where you can see it's got a double deployant action. We actually have ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps here, so over time, the little clamshell lock cannot wear those down or diminish them. And so that's a nice little feature there. We have the clamshell lock, which is what keeps all of this secured during vigorous activity because it is a sporty sports watch. Rolling back around to the case, you can see the bracelet is fixed to the case using screws and bars. That's reassuring. That gives you some protection against accidental removal of bracelet from case. Whenever you see spring bars, I always feel a little bit nervous with a heavy and expensive sports watch, whereas here, screws and bars, I have a lot of confidence. You can see that the detailing of the case and the bezel, as intricate as the bracelet, we have micro bevels on the crown shoulders. We have these little polymer shoulders for the chronograph pushers as well as the crown. Note that the shoulder around the crown is hexagonal, so are the bolts inside the bezel, and they are bolts. That's how it's possible to align their slots all the way around. You can't screw a screw in so perfectly that it aligns like that, and a lot of people don't realize this. Now, on a Royal Oak Offshore, those bolts are steel. On a standard Royal Oak, they're going to be white gold, and so that's just the way it is. You can also see that they are still recessed, and that's very important because when the bolts are flush or stand proud of the bezel, AP considers that to be the threshold of replacement. You can see the character lines of the bezel continue through the mid case and the case back. We have an expanding bevel on the flank of the lugs. There's a little satin lip to the edge of the bezel, and then there's the polished outer face. Across the top, vertical satination, and then the dial, it's a hobnail, but unlike later Royal Oak Offshores, which use a stamped mega tapisserie, this is the petite. So this is the petite hobnail or petite tapisserie, the pantograph cut version, whereas the mega is just stamped. This is actually turned on a vintage lathe that takes a large template with over 20,000 little dots and details, and then it transcribes that pattern onto a small brass disc that becomes the dial, which is then galvanized galvanized blue. And so you can see all of those little micro textures that would be gone from later offshores that had the stamped dial. There's a tachymeter scale on the flange, and you can see that's used to gauge speed in conjunction with the chronograph. We have a Dubois Depraz 2840 vertical clutch chronograph modules. Thanks to the vertical clutch, the chronograph always engages without jump or stagger. We have white gold hands, as well as what are called blob style indices on this dial variant. And you can see there's no shortage of lume. Taking a quick look, you can see the Cyclops Eye style magnifier. Unlike Rolex, it's not on the crystal, it's actually on the dial. And because this is a Dubois Depraz chronograph module on a JLC base caliber, you'll note that the center line of the crown is a little bit below the center line of the pushers. The chronograph module is on top the base caliber, but the base caliber has the date, which is why we're looking almost through a tunnel down at the date. We do have a screw down crown. The watch is 100 meters water resistant. We have both a stop seconds function, so you can set the watch to a reference time. We also have a quick set system for the date. At the time the Offshore was designed, AP owned 40% of JLC, which is why the JLC movement was spec'd as the tractor caliber to drive the chronograph from the beginning. And it is 889 based automatic winding. It features a 40 to 42 hour power reserve, and it has the hacking seconds and the quick set functions that you observed earlier. You can see satination as well as polished screws on the case back, which echoes the rounded octagonal form of the bezel. And that rounded octagon was originally inspired by a vintage diving helmet. That's where Gerald Genta originally found the idea. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.